Hi, my name is James Frazier, and this is my first presentation for Spanish. And for this first presentation, our topic is to choose three historically significant figures from a country which speaks the language which you are learning. And so I went and chose three significant figures from Mexico. So let's go ahead and get started. So who I'll be covering today? I'm going to cover Guadalupe Victoria, Antonio Lopez de Santillana, and Pancho Villa. So Guadalupe Victoria. He was born September 29th, 1786. His real name was, or his birth name was Manuel Felix Fernandez, but he changed it to Guadalupe Victoria. And the reason is that he believed, or, well, the definition of Victoria to the U.S. is basically victory, and he was a general as well as the first president of United Mexican States. So victory was a big deal to him, and so it was so much so that he changed his name to it. He formed a lot of diplomatic relationships with many people, just to name two of them, with the United States as well as the United Kingdoms. He abolished slavery in the United Mexican States, and he died March 21st, 1843. Being the first president, I thought he was a very significant figure to Mexico, and many of the lists that I try to look up and find who was significant to the Mexican people, he was one of the top ones that were always listed. So Antonio Lopez de Santillana. This is probably one of the better known historically significant Mexicans, being since he was involved with the Alamo in our U.S. history. He's probably one of the better known ones. He was born February 21st, 1794. Um, and while he was president and was involved and alive, it was actually by some historians called the Age of Santillana because he had such a big influence on Mexico at the time. He joined the Mexican military in June of 1810. We weren't. There is no real record of what the exact day was. He rose to the rank of general. He was actually president of Mexico 11 different times. Many in between most of those, he was in exile during the time of his absence. He died June 21st, 1876. And he had like a whole age of Mexico where it was named after him because he was such a big influence, just from being a general and participating in all the different wars and conflicts that he was involved in, as well as being the president of Mexico 11 different times. Really, he has a huge significant impact on Mexico. And there's actually a song about the Alamo which mentions him in it by Johnny Cash called "Remember the Alamo." It's a pretty cool song if you want to listen to it. So Pancho Villa, he was born June 5th, 1878, and his birth name, just like the very first person talked about, he also changed his name from his birth name. I haven't been able to figure out how to properly pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try. He served in the Mexican Revolution. He was one of the main and top generals who really played a major role in the revolution. Um, he was assassinated July 20th, 1923. Um, and the reason for why he was assassinated is not completely sure. He had gained many enemies during his time being the general of the Mexican Revolution. He did a lot of bad things, but he was a very popular and very interesting historical figure from Mexico's history, where a lot of people on many of the interesting lists, like the most popular Mexicans or historically significant Mexicans, this he was one of the very popular ones that were always on the top of the list. And there's actually a song about him as well that I know by not by Willie Nelson, but my favorite version of it being sung is by Willie Nelson, and it's called Pancho and Lefty, and it's a song kind of based on um, Willie Nelson's belief of what happened to Pancho when he was assassinated or why. And so to wrap things up, we covered three Mexicans, all of which who were born in Mexico, and the reason I chose these three is because I saw them all as significant figures from Mexico. The first one being the first president of the United Mexican State, The second one being a big influence in the first half of the 19th century, and the last one being Mexican, being very involved in the Mexican Revolution, where he was probably one of the top generals who was involved in that war. And so that's my presentation. Here's my bibliography, and thanks for watching my presentation.